This will be the first time I ever share this story, which has run in my family for generations and has been passed down. I am afraid that they will discover me, that I have told people, because it is a mystery, and in a way, it's a shame. I come from a traditional family. Sharing our legends and mysteries with strangers is as shameful as being imprisoned or failing to maintain a lasting relationship. Well, let me get straight to the point. My great-great-grandmother was an Indian woman named Bonnie. They say that she got lost and was welcomed by my great-great-grandfather's family. At the time, he was still a young man. They fell in love, married and built their home. A wooden hut on the same grounds as the family. They helped in the church and worked for the land for their livelihood. The town they were in was very small. It had around 600 people. It was the beginning of the 20th century, and even after almost 20 years of marriage, they had no children. It was about that time, I believe, in the year of 1910, when the children appeared. I do not know the facts that took place officially. The legend says that during a terrible storm, the kind of storm where you cannot see anything but a monstrous torrent of rain, they appeared after a huge bang that could be heard from the whole town. The noise was so great that the whole town awoke. It was as if a lightning bolt had fallen in the middle of the city, yet there was no light, only a bang and earthquakes. The priest of the city almost had a heart attack, because the intensity of the sound was greater next to his residence that was adjacent to the church of the city and the small cemetery. Armed with a lamp, a shotgun, and an umbrella, the old priest faced the fear and the rain in search of the unknown. Opening up the old iron gates of the cemetery, he found the source of the great crash. The poor priest almost crapped in his pants as he noticed the appearance of a sinkhole in the middle of the cemetery ground. Tombs, skeletons, and coffins mingled with the mud that turned the crater into a deep pool. Around there, he heard a weak cry. It came from an old, rotting wooden crate, similar to an improvised casket, which was thrown in a corner, half covered with mud. He lit the cracks, and he could see small, shiny eyes. With a lot of effort, as everything was filled with mud, the old priest opened up the crate. He immediately saw that this rotten box housed two filthy children who should not have been more than 5 or 6 years of age. He welcomed them and protected them during the night. After the storm came the calm, and with the first lights of the sun, all the population of that small city went to the priest to check the damage from the storm. It was then that he introduced them to the children. Everyone, including my great-great-grandfather and his wife, were shocked by the children's appearance. They were small, dressed in robes of the altarpieces borrowed by the father. They were clean because the good old man had taken care of it and tried to feed them, but they refused to eat or drink anything. The sink, the crash, the appearance of the children, everything was so strange, but nothing compared to the strangeness of children. The boy was taller and a little stronger. The girl was withered and with a swollen belly, exposing her ribs. They were both cadaverous, with a sickly color, a milky white and slightly grayish, almost like the color of some corpses. The eyes of both of them were absolutely huge. They were the biggest eyes the people there had ever seen. They were blue eyes, but not a beautiful blue, sparkling like a Caribbean seawater. They were of a very deep blue, like the abyss of the ocean, giving them an even weirder look. Their heads were swollen, larger than any normal children's, and their hair was white. The hair of the girl reached down to her waistline, and the boy's went down to shoulder height. The doctor of the city examined them, and noticed that they had very cold skin. It was probably at the limit of hypothermia. They were both malnourished and had teeth of the most exotic shape. They were scattered teeth, small, malformed, almost like fish teeth, or rather a piranha, but the doctor said they could not harm anyone. Everyone was shocked. No one knew how they could have possibly gotten there. If their parents died when the sinkhole opened, or if they were left there that rainy night because of their appearance and almost died at the scary natural phenomenon that happened, nobody knew. Nobody could even guess. The days followed, and the children remained in the care of the priest. Everyone worked in the sinkhole, throwing earth, recounting the dead, replacing them in their coffins, and promoting new burials together with the town hall and the priest. The kids were requiring of a lot of attention. They drank no water, no juice, no wine, no nothing. They also refused to eat anything cooked or nourished with vegetables and cereals. Just raw or almost raw meat and absolutely nothing else. They would converse amongst themselves in a language which the priest, knowing even of Greek and Latin, had no idea which people the language belonged to. It was then that my great-great-grandfather made the proposal. They wanted to adopt the children. The priest accepted because he just wanted to be free of that burden. The mayor agreed because he did not think the police would find the parents of the children, and he also wanted to get rid of the responsibility. Then they were registered, as if they were my great-great-grandparents' legitimate children. They would age, but they would not raise issues so soon. They would only look older, unfortunately, but there would not be so much questioning about the nature of the children, just about their appearance. They gave the kids names, Brad and Casey. They arranged their hair and dressed them in normal children's clothes, but they stood out from any other children. My great-great-grandmother identified a lot with them, children from another world, lost in another reality. Time passed by, and things did not get any easier at all. The children remained aggressive. They refused to get dressed. They would knock over furniture. They would beat domestic animals. They spoke only in their guttural and private language. And they only ate raw and extremely poorly cooked meats and fish. My great-great-grandfather wanted to return them, but my great-great-grandmother had the idea of taking them to the priest for a baptism. Perhaps after the sacrament, the children would lose their devilish side. It is said that the day of the baptism was terrible. The children debated, kicked, they attacked the priest. They also attacked my grandparents and anyone who tried to take a hold of them. Many would say that what happened there was not a baptism, but an exorcism. After the baptism, the children calmed down, almost too much. They returned to the house without speaking, and they laid down in their beds without any protest whatsoever. That night, something happened that would make this case definitely buried in the memory of the city. Something that to this day, the people of that place do not recognize and insist on not remembering. And even if someone did know the full story, why would they ever believe it? Even if they did believe it, they would probably not tell it, because there is no plausible explanation to justify what happened. It was a beautiful night, and the full moon was out. Everyone was sleeping, and the cold wind of early winter began to make people wrap themselves in their blankets and forget about anything but a warm, cozy night of sleep. Then again, that thunder rumble came from the highest side of the city, near the church. That night, no one had the courage to leave the house to see what was happening. Everyone cowered underneath their blankets, and people only heard the madness that seemed to happen outside. At first, it was the screams, almost howls, that sounded like a big animal that was in deep pain. Then, 2 distinct shots were heard, and then 3. It soon seemed that a pack of wild dogs had taken over the city. Through the streets, people would hear the quick footsteps of a frightening troop running through the corners. Many swore that they heard voices speaking in a strange language, much like the children's. There were more screams, laughter, loud thumps, as if those things outside were testing the resistance of some doors and windows. And after a while, there was what seemed like a drum. 1 beat, 2, and then 3. Soon, there was a whole profane drumming outside. Then there was a tambourine, flutes, and all kinds of instruments. These voices seemed to sing a song from hell. They were making guttural sounds, mixed with those scary howls and sinister laughter. It is said that all of this lasted a few hours, and that long before even the sunrise, the city had returned to the deadly silence of a terrified population. Some people swore that even during dawn, it was still possible to hear the instruments and laughter echoing in the distance. With the security and protection from the sun, the people went out to the streets to see the damage, and it was huge. There were chickens shattered as if they had been eaten alive. There were dogs and cats brutally dead, and some were partially devoured. The cemetery had a new sinkhole, this time even deeper than the last one. It was discovered to lead to a network of tunnels and caves. The cemetery was relocated, and the place was completely sealed up so that no one would ever explore these macabre caves. It seemed convenient at the time, thinking that these creatures came from there, cave creatures from inside the land. The saddest thing of all was found in the church. The old priest was dead. He was hard as a stone, in front of the heavy wooden door that was open. In his hands was the Bible and a crucifix. For those people, he had seen the devil. Everything was twisted or destroyed. The stock of food was scattered or stolen. Everyone wept and mourned the unfortunate death of the old and beloved priest, but my great-great-granddad suffered more. The windows of the children's room were open, and it appeared that they had deliberately ran away and joined that demonic troop. 7 days after the event, in the middle of a cold dawn, weak knocks on my grandparents' door made them wake up. My grandfather, frightened, took the shotgun and opened the locking bolt. It was Casey. She was dirty with mud and a liquid that looked like blood, and she stank of rotting flesh. They gave her a bath, clothes, and food. My great-great-grandpa was very happy to have this girl back, but unfortunately, the rest of the city did not share this love. Some spoke badly behind their backs. Others conspired to rob the girl during the night or take her away and get rid of her. And some, even more cruel, even contemplated bringing back the Holy Inquisition and burning the girl as a witch or some kind of demon. They linked the events and attributed all the problems that happened in those months to the appearance of the children. Things soon became entirely unsustainable. A little more than a month after all of the nighttime chaos, the city seemed to be stabilizing, and the neighbors seemed to be pretending to forget Casey's presence there. She did not leave the house, even though she was willing and wanted to. She became more cheerful and less of a little brat. She began to call my great-great-grandmother Mama. Then, without a warning, at the end of a foggy afternoon, Brad returned. He was in a much worse state than Casey that cold dawn. Many residents were furious, and they would rage and bang on the door while my grandmother just tried to give him a bath. My grandfather was on the edge. He was ready to use his shotgun if they tried to invade the residence. After much talk, they on one side of the door and my grandfather on the other. Things seemed to have quietened down, but Brad was sick. The days passed by and he weakened. He was accepting soup and bread, and he cried a lot. Casey seemed to try and console her brother, but he looked at her with a disappointed look, as if he had been betrayed or abandoned by his sister. Soon, people began knocking on the door again, insisting that they get rid of the children, that they are a curse, that they ruined the place where they live. In the days that followed, old men and children began to get sick. I'm talking vomiting and diarrhea, and they blamed our family for the disease. When the first child died from this kind of sickness, my grandparents had already left for another city to stay with relatives. A short time after this, Brad died. After his death, Casey changed completely. Her hair grew strong and a beautiful blonde. Her white skin turned rosy pink, and her feeding habits improved dramatically, giving her a strong, healthy body as a child. After a year of escaping from their city, my grandparents decided to return home. Casey's weird teeth had fallen out by then, and they did not look so scary anymore. They lied to their friends and their neighbors, saying that she was Virginia, the daughter of distant cousins who had passed away, and everybody believed them. She almost looked like another child entirely anyway, beautiful, strong, with big, bright blue eyes. They would never say that it was the same malnourished, bulbous-headed creature that had appeared a year ago in the city. along with her plague-bearing brother. Brad died and took with him almost a third of the city from the sickness. The new cemetery needed to be expanded. Years later, my great-great-grandfather bought a good house in another state and they moved. Casey, or Virginia rather, got married, had children, and died at about 70 years of age without ever telling anyone who her real parents were, or even where she came from. This is a mystery that she took to the tomb. Brad also never gave any clues. I have no proof of that, but I can say that it existed. Since my great-great-grandparents had not supposedly had any biological children, Casey is my great-grandmother of blood. I don't know what this means for me. As far as I can tell, I'm as normal as anyone else, so I don't know. Maybe the story is just a story, or maybe it's actually true. This happened to my grandfather. He was working on his farm a few miles outside of Cadillac. The dogs suddenly start going off. They are barking angrily and facing the timber. My grandfather looks towards the timber to see what has gotten them just so riled up. He sees what he thought at first was a black bear just past the tree line. He looks a little bit harder and sees that it's more brown in color than black, and that its face does not really look like a bear's. Whatever it is starts walking the tree line, but still facing my grandfather and the dogs. The bear thing is headed toward the horse pasture. My grandfather goes inside and grabs his rifle. I'm not sure what kind it was. He comes back outside. The thing is still behind the tree line, and he fires a warning shot just past it to scare it away from the horse pasture. This thing stands up on its hind legs, and that is when Grandpappy sees that this is not a bear. It has a much skinnier build than a bear, and there is a very visible tail hanging down. This thing is about 30 yards away, so my grandfather did not know the exact height, but he guessed that the thing stood about 6.5 feet tall. This thing stares at him for what seems like an eternity, then drops back down on all fours and bolts off into the woods. The way it ran and its speed convinced my grandfather that what he saw was no bear. Fast forward to a few days later, my grandfather is getting ready for bed. Right as he was getting ready to lay down, he heard a commotion coming from the direction of the horse pasture. The horses were whinnying. Something was snarling. My grandfather throws on his boots, grabs his rifle, and runs out of the pasture. When he gets there, all of the horses are huddled underneath the shelter at the edge of the field. My grandfather notices that one of the colts is missing. He looks around the pasture, but he could not find it anywhere. He ends up going back to the house after a little while. He goes out again in the morning to look for the colt. He never finds a trace of the thing, even in the daylight. So, fast forward to about 1 week later after that last thing happened. It's late in the evening once again. My grandfather is washing dishes in the kitchen. Suddenly, there is a loud sound coming from right outside the cabin. It sounded like no animal he had ever heard before in his life. My grandfather described it as sounding like a coyote yelp, but much deeper than that. He grabs the lantern and opens up the front door. The yelping stops as soon as he stepped outside. He stands in the doorway for a little while, waiting to see if whatever it was starts back up again. Nothing else happened, so he just went back inside. My grandfather was pretty sure that all three events were related. I wish I could ask him about it in more detail, but he passed away back in 2007. I have a really weird experience with what could be a thunderbird, but really, me and my coworkers are not sure what it was. I was sent out to Cadillac to do some surveying of a forest that was infested with something that was killing the trees. Nothing too odd there. I've done it many times before. I took out a new guy to get him some experience. Now, Cadillac is not the most remote area, but it's still pretty rural, and there is a shit ton of forested area. Anyways, I pull up to the area. There is no path, so we have to park on the side of the road and walk it. The area is about a half mile into the woods. No problem. I've walked much longer before. I start walking through the brush, kind of cutting my way through. It's summertime, so it is not easy to get through. I get about halfway there, and I can smell the smell of death. It's probably a dead deer, but it wasn't on the ground. This dead deer, it was in a tree, at least 20 feet up off the ground. There was no rope that it was hanging from, nothing. It was literally just impaled on the tree. I take a picture on my work phone and I send it to the boss. He tells us it was probably some prick hunting out of season and to just leave it. That still doesn't explain how the hell it could have been impaled on a tree branch 20 feet upwards, but okay, I guess. I continue to the site. As we get closer, we can obviously see that there is something wrong with the trees. They are dying, and quickly too. As we get closer, it only gets worse. I've never seen anything like it before. We finally reach our point. The trees are just absolutely decimated. There is at least a 50-foot circle of just dead trees. Think of it like if a flying saucer or if a UFO landed type of circle. The smell of death at this point is just so strong and horrid. As we expected from the smell, there are about 4 other dead deer. There are also other rotting animals there that I could not really make out what they were because they were just decayed. There were feathers everywhere. Along the rim of the circle, the trees were dying. I called my boss. He told us to come back to the truck and write up a report. I asked if he wanted us to survey. He says no, and tells us to just get back to the truck and report what we had seen. At this point, the new guy and I are just kind of stunned. We'd never seen anything like this before. We returned to the truck, and I wrote up my report. Not too interesting, but our boss never told us what the hell was going on, and to this day, I've never seen anything remotely close to that. Did the feathers look larger than normal? Sorry, stupid question, but I'm genuinely interested. They range from unusually large to like cotton ball looking feathers. The large ones though, I did not get any measurements, but think of a giant turkey type of feather. That's how large they were. They were at least 1.5 feet in length and about 6 inches thick. I'm not saying this was a thunderbird or anything. It could just 100% be an abnormally large turkey, but I've never seen turkeys straight up destroy an area that large. Hell. I guess I'll go ahead and share the 2 stories I have. The first one I put a lot more stake in, simply because I could not explain it whatsoever. I have a wonderful home life and family my entire childhood, including grandparents that spoiled me and my brother absolutely rotten. Almost every single year since birth, they would take us to the same campground in Grandpa's RV for vacation during the summer. Those are some of the happiest times of my life. Genuinely, I get teary just typing this. The last time that we ever went, me, my brother, and both grandparents, was summer of 2015, and I somehow knew the day we left the campground in 2015 that it would be the last. I just knew. I remember walking outside to ask Grandpa if he needed help unhooking the sewage and electrical stuff, getting the car on the trailer, that type of thing. As I watched him bent over, fooling with the trailer hitch, this bizarre feeling just completely overcame me. It was like some bittersweet contentment that was nostalgic, sad, and thankful all at once. This will be the last time you all will come here, popped into my head, as if someone just spoke it to me. Whatever weird feeling this was lasted for around 10 to 20 seconds. It almost felt like I was high or something. The sunlight looked brighter, and I just had this floaty feeling inside my body. The feeling passes, and Grandpa did not need my help, so I go back inside and resume playing the DS port of Chrono Trigger, and we go on our way that day. Fast forward throughout my life. My brother moved out and went to college that fall. He would only go on to visit a couple of times a year from then on to this day. I entered a super toxic relationship that December and started grad school in January, so there went my free time as well. I'm no longer in that relationship, don't worry. My grandpa developed health problems in 2017-ish and eventually passed away in 2019. My family has not been the same since then. 2015 was indeed the last summer vacation with my mom and papa, and I somehow knew that ahead of time. The next one is spoopy, but could probably be explained by an animal. It was around 2012 or 2014ish. I'm still living at home with my parents. I live in a very rural, unincorporated county in West Virginia. It's so rural, we do not have any traffic lights, and the nearest Walmart is over an hour away. I always heard stories of devil dogs and werewolf-ass bullshit about our community, none of which I particularly believed, but it's a fun thought for a hole-in-the-wall community with nothing exciting going on. I'm outside one night, feeding my dog. Quick geography time. My parents' house is up on a hill about 80 yards away from the main road. Behind the house is a sheer, wooded mountain. That's where I was feeding the dog. That said, I could not see anywhere in front of the house as I was behind it. I hear what I can only describe as a mix between an owl and a dog down by the main road. I just think, cool animal. I hear the same sound again, but somewhat closer now. I just think the same thing. I hear it again, and this time, it is very clearly somewhere in the yard. I hear it one last time, and it's literally just on the other side of the house. I take my dog and get the hell inside. I don't tell anyone, because Dad would have probably just called me a little bitch for being scared of owls. It probably was just an owl or something, but I've heard them before, and that was not it. It also cleared an outrageous distance within 5 to 7 seconds, all the while screeching like a weirdo. So, I don't know. It's likely perfectly explainable by some local fauna, but it's honestly the only remotely spooky thing I've ever had happen to me. So this happened to me 2 or 3 years ago. It was 4 a.m. I was lying down on my stepdad's couch that I was sleeping on at the time. I was withdrawing from alcohol. This was night number 2. I was drinking a half-gallon of vodka every other day at the time. You do the math. I was in poor condition. I decided I could not go on like that, so I forced myself to quit. I was the only one in the apartment on this particular night. Before you accuse me of hallucinating, I was not. I have never hallucinated in my entire life. I was 100% lucid. I was just extremely depressed, anxious, and nauseous. I had been experiencing this creepy feeling all night long, like I was being closely watched. I could not sleep because of it. I turned on the television in the hopes of distracting myself. Suddenly, the hairs on my arms stood up. The feeling was back, but much stronger this time. The east living room window fills up with a blue-green light. At first, I thought maybe it was a police car, but after thinking on it for a second, I knew it wasn't. It was far too bright, and I was on the 3rd floor of an apartment building. There was no way it could have filled up the entire window like that. It completely disappears after around 3 seconds or so. I am so spooked that I can hardly move. I eventually work up the courage to go and peek outside of said window. There are no cars there, no nothing. I linger for a moment just to make sure. There is still nothing. Just as I am about to walk away, I spot someone walking on the other side of the street. First, I assumed it was some junkie walking to get a fix or something, because it's around 4:30 a.m. by now. I knew they were not exercising or anything like that, because they were walking at an extremely slow pace. The closer that he or she or it gets, the better I am able to see. This person is wearing a black cloak. They are just walking as slowly as they possibly can. What in the hell? I retreat back to the couch. I finally fall asleep after silently shitting myself for a moment. Okay, I'll bite. I was around 7 years old when this happened. I was on a picnic with my family. I got to take my bicycle with me. There's a big field with hills and trees scattered all around. It was only us there. I ride my bike and go down all of the steep hills. As I'm going back up, I could see something. There was this weird-ass moving cloud thing just a few meters away from me. It was colored a mix of black and red. It starts moving towards me. Oh shit. I take my bike as fast as I can to get back to the picnic spot. This dark cloud is chasing me, fairly quickly too. After a while I turn around and realize the thing was gone. It's nowhere in sight. I keep going to my family and I do not look back. I tell my dad. That's nice and on. He doesn't believe me. For some reason, I do not think too much about it, and I try to go back to biking. My bike is not moving. I look at my tires. The thing was completely destroyed, just shredded to bits. We head home after I tell my dad about the broken bike. My mom beat my ass for the bicycle. Fuck you, dark cloud demon.